This is the Reading Instruction Show. I'm your host, as always, Dr. Andy Johnson. Today we're talking about Vygotsky, sociocultural theory, and reading instruction. So, purpose statement. At the end of this video, you will learn about Vygotsky's sociocultural theory of learning and its impact on reading instruction. But first of all, theories. Oh, it's just a bunch of theory. What is a theory? A theory is a way to explain a set of facts. These are important because they help us understand and explain phenomena. Theories connect data dots or research data dots. Different theories connect different data dots differently. Thus, you can have two theories about reading or about learning or about other things, connecting different data dots differently. Some data dots are the same and some are different. A robust theory connects a lot of data dots and leaves few unexplained or unaccounted for. Weak theories connect just a few data dots. Now, the importance of theories, research-based theories, theories based on research, data dots connecting different studies, enable us to design effective learning experiences. Based on this research-based theory, we can take that and we can apply that. And Vygotsky's theory is one that we'll look at today. Also, understanding and knowing about a lot of different research-based theories enables us to evaluate strategies, to design our own stuff, to evaluate instructional designs and curriculums. We don't have to just sit there and listen as people hand us stuff and say, okay, we'll do it. We can evaluate if we have sufficient knowledge bases of these different learning theories. And a theory is not a hypothesized idea. A theory in terms of science is a way to explain a set of facts and explain things. Now, let's take a look, first of all, at comprehensive literacy instruction and what this has to do with Vygotsky. The 10+1 essential pillars, you see them here. And one of them is number 6, social interaction and conversation around good books and around writing, and just conversation in general is and should be an important part of a comprehensive literacy program, an important part of learning how to read, an important part of learning how to write. Conversation, talk, yes, social interaction. These are interactive and interdependent language literacy learning components. Talking, listening, writing, reading, and thinking. They interact. They enhance each other. Development in one enhances the development in the other. The reading-writing connection has been firmly established. One helps the other, the same with listening and talking and thinking. Writing is a form of thinking. Reading involves thinking, the ability to comprehend. More about that, but let's talk about Lev Vygotsky. You see him here, 1896 to 1934, and why that's important in just a minute. But he said change in thinking happens from the outside in, cognitive development. As we hear the thoughts of others and are exposed to the thoughts of others in our culture, we gradually internalize this. So thinking with young children and with adults begins as a social process on the outside that children gradually internalize. The social process. Now, he was a Russian educational researcher and theorist. This importance of the social, because he grew up in this time in Russia when it went from the czars to this communist social thing. So yes, the importance of, so what was happening in his society also became internalized into his way of thinking. Sociocultural theory, the importance of culture. Our cognitive development, children's cognitive development, these are enhanced and promoted by our culture. That's the thinking and the stuff that happens around us. Today it would be movies, internet, media, people, our social interactions with others, and language. These are all very important in the cognitive development of children, but I would say K through adults. More on that. And again, this thought will be reinforced, but thinking occurs first. We think on the outside first, and it's gradually internalized. That's why the thinking and the talk around us are so very important. And this is why talk and social interaction are so important parts of a pre-K through grade 3 literacy curriculum. Talking enhances learning, but I would say pre-K through graduate school, the ability to talk with others, to process. When you talk, you have to explain your own thinking, and that helps you learn deeper, and you have to negotiate as you listen to others in small groups. Language is a tool to manipulate thought. It's a way to carry ideas. Language that we use and that others use shapes our thinking. It helps us go from lower to higher mental functions as we're exposed to culture and to language and others. And again, thinking is shaped from the outside in, and I'll show you how this manifests in reading instruction in just a minute. Writing is thinking, writing enhances reading, reading enhances writing. Comprehension involves thinking. Yes, it does. We don't sit and just get comprehended at. Comprehension is something we must actively do to be engaged in. And reading involves metacognition, thinking about thinking. Do I understand what I read? Talking, listening, social interaction, all these things research has shown to enhance vocabulary, language structures, conceptual knowledge, and ultimately the ability to read and write. Higher mental functions, again, happen on the external level first, the level of society, the social level, and gradually becomes internalized. This sociocultural theory of development. We are influenced by the thinking that goes on around us. And the idea of culturally sustaining pedagogy, using the thinking and the experience of our children to help them learn to read and write and to learn in general. It capitalizes on students' ways of thinking and seeing the world. We must recognize that, recognize their strengths, not see students from different cultures through a deficit lens, but use their strengths as their way of seeing and learning. It's not any more or less deficient than others. It's just a different way of seeing and being in the world. Social interaction, especially with young children, very important in developing thinking. This means that children need to interact with parents, with teachers. Interact means not talk to, but talked with. Talking with peers. Spending 5 minutes a day or even 5 minutes a class period talking about what they have learned with a small group is very important. It enhances learning. And with mentors, someone who's a little older. Interaction with our culture. Our culture shapes us, our way of thinking and seeing with the world, seeing the world. Very much like the brain and neurons. As we interact with the world, our brain is shaped, our neural pathways get interconnected. As we interact with our culture, we shape our culture, broader culture, but the culture around us, and our culture shapes us. So think about this. How do you learn to think at higher, more complex levels? And how do we develop students' ability to think, to plan, to problem solve? Well, here are some applications of that theories. For comprehension, comprehension involves these higher level thinking processes, some or all, and we teach the cognitive processes specifically to develop the skill. Here's that thinking moving from outside to in. We teach each of these specifically so students are able to automatize it and to do it automatically. We create pre, during, and post-reading activities that involve one or more of these. We do this in large groups, small group, pairs, and individuals, and they're eventually able to internalize and do these things automatically. We can improve students' ability to comprehend by improving thinking. We teach the cognitive process, the thinking process, to develop the skill. Skill in reading is something you do automatically without thinking about it. We want students to engage in these cognitive processes automatically during the act of reading without thinking about it. For example, inferring. Here is the skill and the steps. We call it a thinking frame. We teach them very specifically. Step 1, step 2, step 3, to compare and contrast, to analyze, support a statement. Step 1, step 2, step 3. We are very explicit about this. We teach it on the social level, in large group, in small group and pairs, and eventually, not in a lesson, not in 2 lessons, but over time, depending on the age level, students are able to internalize this. So they don't have to think about it. So they infer automatically as they read, or they analyze, or they support a statement, or they evaluate and critique. And we create writing activities that involve pre, during, and post-reading. The pre is important. So students are reading with purposeful intent. We teach the process to develop the skill so that they do these automatically. This idea of scaffolding and zone of proximal development. Let's take a look at that. Now, children learn best, young children learn best through their interactions with students, adults, and teachers. The ideal learning is this multi-level learning where you have students in grades 1, 2, or 3 sitting together, talking as the younger children hear the older children talking, engaged in the reading and writing process. That's the scaffolding that enables them to learn and to grow. Now, this zone of proximal development, that's the place between the independent level and the frustration level. Independent, I can do it on my own independently without any help. Frustration level, no matter how much help I get, I can't do the task. And here's this nice place in the middle, the zone of proximal development. We can do the task if we have a little help or scaffolding. And good teachers know students' independent level. They get just a little ahead and they create some scaffolding to enable them to do the task, to accomplish the task. One example of this, you have something at students' independent level to read. They can read it just fine. You get just a little above that independent level and you create a scaffolded activity, maybe through a graphic organizer or a story preview or a story map that enables them to read that thing that's just a little harder than they normally would easily. And that's how learning occurs. You gradually stretch them, you give them scaffolds so that it becomes easier and easier. That's how learning occurs, whether it's in reading or math or sports or whatever. You find the independent level, you get just a little ahead of it, you create some scaffolding, and we gradually stretch and learn, and our independent level gets higher and higher. So what, do you say? So what? Well, a couple of applications. You want to use scaffolding in the form of guided practice, and I'll show you what that is, and the zone of proximal development for skills instruction of any kind, whether it be a sports skill, music skill, reading skill, math. Again, find their independent level, get a little ahead, create that scaffolding. Children are able to perform more challenging tasks when assisted by advanced others, someone who's just a little ahead of them, a mentor. And again, the importance of having older students work with and talk with younger students. And social interaction, collaboration, cooperative learning, these are essential for learning. Cooperative learning comes in a variety of different things, and I won't go through it here, but children talking and working together. When I do worksheets, nothing wrong with a worksheet. A worksheet can be a valuable tool, but I like students to do them together. It is the conversation that takes place as they're interacting that enhances learning. Cooperative learning activities take a little bit more time than just doing it independently, but the conversation enables students to learn more and to learn more deeply. Cognitive modeling, another thing, this is thinking out loud for instruction, is where your thoughts become verbalized. I didn't quite understand that last sentence. I think I'll go back and reread it. That's cognitive modeling, thinking out loud. And for teaching higher level tasks, including problem solving, again, use pairs or small groups. It is the conversation that takes place that is important, not the end result, but the process of talking with others. Now, here's guided instruction or guided practice. To teach a skill of any kind involves input. Here's where you tell them the steps and you model. Boys and girls, here is how you do long division. Step 1, step 2, watch me as I do it. Boys and girls, here's how you use this study skill strategy. Step 1, step 2, watch me as I do it. Boys and girls, here's how you compare and contrast. Guided practice, which is the key to everything in teaching and learning, is where you do a few together. Let's do one together, and you take the whole class through it. And then independent practice is practice of what has already been learned. If you're teaching effectively, this independent practice, sometimes called homework, should be able to be completed with 95 to 100% success ratio. Homework is not the place to challenge. Homework, or independent practice, is the place to practice what has learned, to reinforce it. That's what homework or independent practice is. Now, here's a neat idea called T-Talk, a way to scaffold teaching and learning. Great post-reading activity can be used across the curriculum. You give students a dualistic statement, one that could be agreed or disagreed, supported or not supported. This could be something related to social studies, school. In this context, it's a dualistic statement related to what was in the book. Billy Marble should have stayed home from school. Agree or disagree. And a good dualistic statement will have students on both sides of this. In reading, I give students this statement up front, so they're reading with purposeful intent. Boys and girls, at the end of today, we are going to have to decide if you think that Billy Marble should have stayed home from school. So as you read, think about that. That's that dualistic statement, agree or disagree. For a T-Talk, and here's the T, you see it, there's the T. Students first meet in pairs, to generate at least 2 ideas on both sides of the T, whether they agree with it or not. Step 1, agree and disagree. They meet in pairs and they get ideas on both sides of the T. And that takes about 5 minutes. Then the pairs meet together in small group to share ideas and come to a consensus. And here's where the heart of a T-Talk occurs. This is where conversation and they support their ideas, a consensus. At the end, one person stands up and shares their group's consensus with 2 supporting ideas. We believe blank because of blank and blank. Now notice the structure. This is support a statement. The statement with 2 supporting ideas. This is great because it's a form of thinking, support a statement, but this also moves nicely into a paragraph where you have an idea and you support that idea. This is a form of scaffolding. Thinking occurs from outside to in. Thinking occurs from outside. Now, word identification. This is another application of Vygotsky'S theory of sociocultural theory. It's important to know the difference. Word recognition is when you instantly see a word and you know what it is. Without thinking, you see it and you automatically know, oh, that word is recognition. I know that. I don't have to sound it out. Or automatic. I know what it is. I recognize it. Word identification is when a word is in your lexicon, the dictionary in your head, but you don't recognize it. So you need some sort of process that you consciously apply to figure out what that word is. You don't recognize it, so you use a strategy, you consciously apply it. And we teach strategies, something you consciously apply, to develop the skill. So you don't have to think about it, you do it automatically. The strategy becomes internalized. Automaticity is the word for a strategy that has become internalized. It is a skill. We teach the strategy to develop the skill. There are 4 word identification strategies, and we're going to look at each one, context clues. And we teach this specifically using steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3. I do this explicitly through input and modeling. We do it together, and then they practice. We teach the strategy explicitly to develop the skill using cognitive modeling, and eventually it becomes internalized so they don't have to think about this. They use context clues automatically as they're reading. The same with analogy. Both sides of the word, look for parts you recognize, make a guess based on clues, see if your guess makes sense. We teach those steps explicitly. The same with morphemic analysis. A morpheme is the smallest unit of meaning within a word. Prefix, suffixes, and roots. We teach the strategy explicitly. Over time, students internalize that. And I know some of you are thinking, what about phonics? What about phonics? That is one word identification strategy. And the purpose of phonics is not to think about phonics, is to internalize it. And with phonics, yes, metacognition, we make a guess and see if our guess makes sense. That's called metacognition. Now, we do have activities to develop cueing systems or to recognize words, but these are different from strategies to identify words. A strategy is something you consciously apply. Some essential terms: reading is creating meaning with print. Word identification are strategies you consciously apply to figure out a word you don't recognize. Word recognition, you instantly know what that word is. Strategy is a cognitive process that you consciously apply. A skill is a cognitive process in reading that has become automated. These could be word identification, study skill strategies, or comprehension strategies. This has been the Reading Instruction Show. We've been looking at Vygotsky'S sociocultural theory and how it applies to reading instruction.